is the Celebrity Afterlife Report podcast.
Hello and welcome to a very special edition of the Celebrity Afterlife Report, the only show on the internet that gives you the up-to-the-minute gossip about all your favorite deceased celebs. It is a very special edition because it's our end-of-the-year review in which I go over the big stories from 2016. If you're new to the show, if you're introducing a friend to the report, this is the one to listen to get you or them up to speed. So let's take the plunge together, shall we? This past year started off strong with news about Abraham Lincoln and his next world wife, Whitney Houston. As 2015 began, the couple were still doing their reality TV show, The Crazy Life of Abe and Whitney, to the cast of which her daughter, Bobby Christina, had been added. The producers introduced former American President Richard Nixon to play Bobby's on-screen boyfriend. Mr. and Mrs. Lincoln objected to that, but the producers insisted, so Tricky Dick stayed with the show. As time passed, Bobby Christina came to believe that Nixon was really in love with her, and she started to have feelings for him. When the producers refused to take Nixon off the show, Abe and Whitney walked away, and the show continued without them under the new title, The Crazy Life of Dick and Bobby. It remains a hit on Afterlife TV to this day. Mr. Lincoln has since moved on to competing in mixed martial arts, actually beating Muhammad Ali in his first professional MMA bout. In 2016, baseball legend turned radio shock jock Babe Ruth got into a feud with TV talk show host Merv Griffin over Griffin booking Osama bin Laden for an on-air interview. Ruth said that the booking was a disgrace and urged his legion of fans known as Bambinos to disrupt Merv's show. They did so by attending a taping of it and setting off stink bombs in the studio. Over time, it came out that Griffin and Ruth had secretly arranged the entire feud to generate publicity for their respective shows. In a parallel story, Griffin, who was gay on the earthly plane, got engaged to former televangelist Tammy Faye Baker. When she got upset with him, she blackmailed him into giving her her own TV courtroom show on which she is known as Judge Tammy, and we'll get back to that in a few minutes. Former Senator Edward Kennedy began the year as a porn star. Unfortunately for Teddy, his first movie, Mr. Kennedy Comes to Washington, revealed that he was a bit lacking in the genitalia department. The senator rebounded by making pornos in which his shortcoming was featured for those who prefer smaller men. His brothers John and Robert were disgusted, to say the least, by his new career, but Kennedy was not convinced by them to switch professions. Former Nirvana frontman and his new wife, Anna Nicole Smith, had already begun doing a very strange late-night cable TV show in which they play married evangelists. The tongue-in-cheek show attracted a large audience of Afterlife hipsters who appreciate their ironic act. From that strange premise, the two moved on to doing a live touring stage show based on their cable act. And when last heard from, they were in the audience at a concert by Jim Morrison's band, The Real Legends. And yes, we will have more about Morrison coming up in just a moment. In February, we learned that comedian Robin Williams and singer Amy Winehouse were planning on getting married. The two met when Robin did voice work for Winehouse's animated TV show, Amy's Amazing Adventures. Eventually, they became husband and wife in a beach ceremony kept secret from the paparazzi. As of this writing, they are still happily married and continue to work on the children's show together. Now, this next story kept popping up with updates all through 2016. Steve Jobs, the co-founder and former CEO of Apple, developed a huge project called iVironment in the next world. It's a blimp hangar-sized building with special equipment that allows residents to experience a rainy day, since it never rains there. He said in interviews that it's one of the things he is most proud of. Jobs commissioned artist Jackson Pollock to paint a giant mural to decorate one of the walls in iVironment. At the official unveiling, Steve discovered that, rather than the giant drip painting he expected, Pollock had made a very explicit female nude. Now, Jobs had the mural taken down, saying that iVironment was a family attraction for which a nude was simply not appropriate. Pollock strenuously objected on the grounds that Jobs had agreed to display whatever he produced. Jobs countered that their agreement only said that the mural would hang in a, quote, public place, unquote, so he had it installed on the back wall of his office building facing an alleyway. Pollock retaliated by arranging for dozens of tour buses a day to drive through the alley to allow people to view his artwork. Enraged, Jobs gave up and handed control of iVironment over to artists Salvador Dali and Jean-Michel Basquiat, who promptly had the mural reinstalled in the attraction and a new adults-only section. Dali and Basquiat arranged for a huge rock concert to be televised from iVironment all over the next world. When David Bowie and Prince arrived in the Afterlife, they were added to the roster of performers. In the middle of Bowie's set, however, the sprinklers above the stage went off, causing David to be electrocuted. And that, of course, ended the show abruptly. A few people later reported seeing a man who looked like Jackson Pollock exiting the room that houses the controls for the rain system just when the incident occurred, but no solid evidence of that has surfaced, and Pollock hasn't been seen in public since. Bowie has made a full recovery from his electrocution. Former astronaut Jim Mitchell transitioned to the afterlife in 2016. Not long after he arrived, Vince McMahon Sr. recruited him to join his side project, a show called NASA on Ice. Jim's part required him to skate while wearing a replica of his spacesuit, something he found more difficult than walking on the moon. He stumbled and fell more than once, slightly injuring himself. Eventually, he quit the show in disgust, and his part was recast to star Hervé Villechaize, the little man who played Tattoo on Fantasy Island. Hervé has since moved on to co-star in a TV sitcom with veteran actress Nell Carter. Ronald and Nancy Reagan split up after the Gipper took a shine to Marilyn Monroe, who she just seems to have been everywhere in the afterlife this year. He wasn't even on hand to greet Nancy when she arrived in the next world. Over the next several months, through a complicated series of events, to say the least, Monroe and Jackie Kennedy essentially exchanged identities, each of them changing her appearance to resemble the other. Jackie even bleached her hair and got breast implants, the better to emulate her movie star rival. After a joint appearance on Tammy Faye Baker's TV courtroom show, Marilyn went back to being herself, but Jackie has kept up her masquerade. Now, more recently, the real Monroe has hooked up with Jackie's earthly plane spouse, John F. Kennedy, while Jackie, in turn, has been living with Ronald Reagan. Now, as of this moment, Monroe is reportedly very upset about Jackie continuing to pretend to be her while Reagan is said to be tiring of Jackie's strange impersonation. Next, we come to the strange saga of Jim Morrison. The former Doors singer had a rough time of it in 2016. He started the year off as a member of The Legends, a band composed of rock royalty like Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and others. Morrison quickly made it known that he considered himself the biggest star in the band, which understandably did not sit well with the others. He was kicked out of the group and went on to a series of increasingly demeaning jobs. After walking off a kids' TV show on which he played the sidekick to Bob Keeshan, the former Captain Kangaroo, he got back on stage with his own group called The Real Legends. Now, when audiences realized the so-called Real Legends were just impersonators of the members of the original Legends band who just lip-synced the pre-recorded tracks, the band was booed off the stage. As 2016 wound down, however, Morrison seemed to be on the rebound after turning the Real Legends into a hardcore rap group. At the end of the year, he seemed to be poised to go to war against rap legends Biggie Smalls and Tupac Shakur at the insistence of his new manager Jerry Heller, who previously managed NWA. Former Saturday Night Live star and blues brother John Belushi adopted a 10-year-old Korean boy and renamed him Kim Belushi. John tried to make his new son into a movie star like Will Smith tried to do with his boy, and to similar results. Try as he might, John just couldn't get audiences to take to young Kim, whose English skills and on-screen charisma left a lot to be desired. When last heard from, John was apparently trying to turn Kim into a pop star along the lines of Justin Bieber. Orville and Wilbur Wright, the sibling inventors of the airplane, had a bit of a rough ride over the course of 2016. The two of them fought over the attentions of astronaut Sally Ride. That turned ugly when Sally spurned both of them in favor of their sister. Their feelings hurt, the brothers tried being male models. And when that adventure failed, they turned, like Ted Kennedy, to working in the porn industry. Surprisingly, their first feature titled Biplane was of the gay variety. Unfortunately, the audience was not impressed by their talent. Since that flop, the boys dropped out of sight, and we haven't heard anything about them since. Red Weatherwax, the man who brought Lassie to Earthly Plane Television, was an unexpectedly prominent figure on the Next World celebrity scene over the past 12 months. He started the year off by announcing he was going to produce a buddy cop action movie with an all-canine cast. That's right, you heard right. Titled The Lassie Squad, the movie was not intended to be a comedy, but a serious film. During production, however, it turned out to be impossible to get the dogs to follow direction, so about halfway into making it, Weatherwax turned The Lassie Squad into a slapstick comedy by adding some old silent movie comedians to the cast. To everyone's shock, Weatherwax included, the film became an instant midnight movie classic like the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Emboldened by that success, he announced the formation of an all-canine cable TV channel. When fellow producer Gary Marshall transitioned to the Next World, Weatherwax immediately offered him the job of creative director of the channel. Marshall accepted, and the two have been working on setting up the new network since then. Founder and former chairman of the Chinese Communist Party, Mao Zedong, was injured a while back. Mao, who has had a lot to say, none of it good, about the current direction of his former country, has been studying English for several months now. Mao decided to show off his newly acquired language skills at an Afterlife karaoke bar. Reportedly very inebriated, Dear Leader fell off the stage in the middle of singing Desperado by the Eagles. Although he landed on a couple seated at a table in the front row, he was not seriously hurt. Well, that's a look back at some of the stories that we followed over the last 12 months. As we head into 2017, there will be more about them and others as they come up. For instance, we now know that former Cuban President Fidel Castro seems to have a thing for Marilyn Monroe, and that the anonymous man who has been impersonating actor Abe Vigoda since even before Abe transitioned to the afterlife seems intent on continuing his charade. No one knows where those or any of the other stories may lead in the new year, but I look forward to finding out along with you. I'd like to thank each and every member of our growing audience for listening to the report and ask you to keep spreading the word about the show. I am the Celebrity Medium, and I will see you in 2017.
You've been listening to the Celebrity Afterlife Report podcast. To ask a question about your favorite deceased celebrity, call 818-3-MY-DREAM. 818-3-MY-DREAM. 818-369-3732.